Eddie showing up tonight. Good to see you, Eddie. Thank you so much for your contribution, sir. Cam and Mark, if Mario hires these new coordinators and coaches and this team goes 5-7 again or goes 6-6, which is not a significant improvement, what will be the conversations moving forward?
I think it's about how you get there, honestly, because yes, you want the result and the result in terms of wins and losses to be different. But if the process is improved, that can be part of the conversation as well. And look, this is not a 1 or 2 year rebuild. So even at 6-6, that is not fully indicative of where Mario Cristobal wants to take this program. However, at some point you got to start winning games. And there's going to be, if Miami finishes again 5-7, 6-6, somewhere in there, borderline 7-5, but that's a securely winning record. You know what I mean? There's going to be more chatter. And that's just facts of the matter. Is Mario the guy for this? Is this rebuild going the way that it, needs to? Did he bring in, are they doing the right things schematically on offense? Are they taking advantage of the talent there? Are they doing, proper things on defense? Is the game being managed better? Are the penalties down? There's going to be all kinds of chatter and everything. But I believe that Mark Cristobal is still going to, continue the path forward in the same kind of a way, because I think that's just who he is. And he's a true believer of what he's selling. You know what I mean? So he's not just going to switch it off. But yeah, if there is a similar kind of record result this year, then you're going to hear similar kind of things. And maybe the volume outside gets turned up. But if you're looking for me to say Mario's going to be on the hot seat. No. It's just, after 2 years, it's not going to happen. It's just not. You're looking at this as a 3+, 4+ year restructuring of the organization entirely. So will it suck as a fan? Will there be chatter from fans of Miami, from rivals, other teams and everything? So Florida State, they're going to be in year 4. They have a dynamic quarterback who looks to pretty much elevate everybody around him on that program and everything, and they could have a solid season. So would it be injurious to the morale to see them have a strong season in Miami? Potentially not. Yeah. But again, this is the journey of 1,000 miles, not the sprint of a single step. So even with things going the way that you've hypothesized, there will be conversations, but we're not getting anywhere near the point of anything being terminal for Mario here.
Absolutely. From that standpoint, in regards to talking about firing, but in terms of conversations, and I know when he says conversations, talking about exactly what you addressed, but talking about what we do here and in other places, other platforms, and talking about evaluations, we are still looking at it is, this is a roster that was built with recruiting classes that ranked 11, 11, 13, and 7 for this particular class, which will have only so much impact on the coming season because, of course, it's a freshman class and is done rather well in the transfer portal. Mm-hmm. So the team talent composite for the 22 season, number 12 in the nation, should be similar, if not better, with a number 7 recruiting class and a good transfer portal showing for 23, which is not out yet. You got to understand, I don't get why this record can't elevate sooner and more decidedly. But like you, before I let you comment on that and respond on that, I like you. I just don't stand on the record. Okay, the record 6-6. That is bottom line. How everyone's judged. What was your record? Okay, you got ranked 12th in the country. You were 9-3. Okay, fine. Where did you go in the playoff or a bowl game? Yes, that's the bottom line. The results. But
Mhm.
in terms of evaluating a coach, especially taking over a program in which there is a rebuild involved, you see 7-5 teams out there all the time that are like 7-5. They beat everyone that they should beat, and they beat them by 7 to 10 points. They didn't look ultra impressive, and they lost 5 games, and they clearly showed that they are light years away from catching the elite in their conference.
Mhm.
Versus 7-5, okay, we got something going here, man. We pushed Clemson to the hilt, and we took Florida State to the final minute. Well, that's something to get excited about. That's a different 7-5 evaluation. But looking at these recruiting classes, both brought in by Mario and before him, so give some credit to Manny Diaz.
Mhm.
They have a 9-3 roster.
Easily, absolutely,
Yes.
100%. And I mean, do we want it to be better sooner than later? Yes. Um, there's still some gaps to be able to making that happen. But yeah, I mean, like, there are moral victory concerns. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, like you had a bad turnover or like a bad bounce, in a game, or you're closing the gap to the teams that you lost to previously. The Carolina, Carolina, Clemson, Florida States, who won by 4, 5, 6 touchdowns. Maybe, well, except for Carolina, that was another close loss. But things like that, and then just the random, once in a literal lifetime Middle Tennessee State shenanigans stop happening. Like, there can be growth, internal growth, that does not necessarily result in a much more a much stronger win-loss record. That is possible.
Oh,
But
absolutely.
yeah, I mean, we want to see wins. And I mean, the talent is there, but there's also gaps in this roster where, like, they got to play another team on well, 2 Thursdays and a Friday and a bunch of Saturdays throughout the next season. But those gaps have functional effect, or the lack of something on the roster, like not having a number 1 wide receiver. That has a negative impact on the game. Even again, what would this team be with Charleston Rambo? Not like 25-year-old Charleston Rambo, but like 22-year-old, 2021 season Charleston Rambo on the roster. How much better would this team be? 2 games? 3? I mean, like, that's literally the kind of gap, the glaring hole that we have on this kind of a roster, So there's a lot that goes into it.
I'm going to produce a video at some point in the next few weeks because this kind of fascinates me. Dumb things like this, just kind of oddities, fascinate me. But if we ask the average college football fan in a typical season, from season to season, out of the 65 Power 5 teams, how many would elevate at least 3 games in the win column or decline at least 3 games? Meaning you were 8-4 last year, you go to 11-1, or you go to 5-7. That to me, I made that delineation as thinking that's the first number that seemed substantial to me. 3 games, not 2, but 3. So I just chose that number. Plus, it hit me a few years ago that the Athlons and the Street and Smiths of the world, for as good as they are at what they do, they're extremely overly conservative in making predictions. They
Yes.
keep it tight to the vest. And if you were 8-4 last year, they might nudge you to 9-3, or if you lost a really good quarterback, and everybody's like, and that's not the reality out there. So I started to
Right.
track this year to year. who elevates or declines by at least 3 games. And it's usually in the Power 5. I thought it was going to be like 8 because I think most of our perception of college football is, it stays the same every year. Well, it stays the same at the elite level pretty much, but everybody else is scrambling around. And that
the other
number,
thing,
Cam,
no, go ahead.
it's usually between 17 and 22. I've charted this for about 5 years. Last year, 27 teams in the Power 5.
Yeah.
Almost half of them either had that kind of elevation or decline, a la Oklahoma 10-2 to 6-6, Michigan State 10-2 to 5-7, et cetera, et cetera. Duke, 3-9 to 8-4 regular season.
Right. And like we did talk about this very thing last year, which was very interesting thought experiment. Well, not thought experiment, but kind of analysis. But the thing about it is, and I've been thinking about my view of this conversation as well. On a large level, people don't really know what's going on outside of like their team and maybe a rival team and like the super top. So if they see, like, and the records are going to be as in a team finishes with the record of 7-5 or 5-7. So the records are going to look like they always look because obviously you had to have as many losses as you have wins in a season. So like, oh, okay, there's a team that slots in there or whatever. So it's like, oh yeah, they're usually there. No, they're not usually there, but they have a record that finishes it with a familiar number to the viewer. So then they just ascribe that to that team in that instance. You know what I mean? It's like, oh yeah, well they're always around that, or they're usually, or maybe they had a bad year or like but like they kind of write it off because they're not really looking at the full landscape. They're looking, at their team, the top teams. You're going to get those 8 o'clock, ESPN games, the 3:30 CBS games, and then So I think that's where people's perception is not as strong because if it's not their team, like, oh, okay, well, Illinois finishing 6-6, that's reasonable. Sure, yeah, they're about that. No, they were actually really good. They were like 8-4, 9-3. They were? Interesting. Okay, cool. It would be that kind of journey towards seeing that. But yeah.
I just find that interesting. And I see, for me, right out of the gate, Colorado's an obvious candidate. 1-11. Deion Sanders comes in. He's grabbing players left and right, both in recruiting from high school and transfer portal. For them to elevate to 4-8 won't surprise anyone. So they're an obvious candidate. Purdue's an obvious candidate going the other way. 8-4 last year, but man, lost anybody who made a play on offense, coach and quarterback. So Miami looks to me as a candidate to go from 5-7 to 8-4.